The red light on camera 1 blazed like an accusation as Emma Rodriguez sat across from news anchor Janet Williams, knowing that the next 10 minutes would either destroy everything her family had built over 60 years or prove that moral courage could still triumph over corporate self-preservation. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the research report that would cost Medicare Solutions $18 billion in market value, while potentially saving thousands of lives worldwide. The studio lights felt impossibly hot as Emma prepared to speak the 5 words that no pharmaceutical CEO had ever said on live television. We were wrong about everything. What the viewing audience didn't know was that Emma's trusted chief medical officer, Dr. Richard Sterling, had been systematically falsifying clinical trial data for 3 years while coordinating with foreign competitors to undermine American pharmaceutical leadership through dangerous drug approvals. The network cameras were about to record the most honest moment in corporate television history, as Emma faced a choice between protecting her company's stock price and acknowledging that Medicare's breakthrough cancer drug was actually accelerating tumor growth in children. This was the confession that would redefine pharmaceutical ethics forever. If this story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Medicare Solutions headquarters stood as a beacon of medical hope in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, where 3 generations of the Rodriguez family had dedicated their lives to developing life-saving medications that had transformed cancer treatment for over 12 million patients worldwide. The sprawling research campus included state-of-the-art laboratories, clinical trial facilities, and manufacturing centers where teams of brilliant scientists worked around the clock to discover breakthrough therapies that could extend life and reduce suffering for patients facing devastating diagnoses. Emma Rodriguez occupied the corner office on the 20th floor, surrounded by awards from medical organizations and thank-you letters from patients whose lives had been saved by Medicare's innovative treatments. At 46 years old, Emma had inherited not just corporate leadership, but also the profound moral responsibility of ensuring that every medication bearing the Medicare name lived up to the company's promise of healing and hope that had guided 3 generations of medical innovation. The Rodriguez family's pharmaceutical legacy had begun with Emma's grandfather, Dr. Miguel Rodriguez, who had immigrated from Spain in 1963 with advanced degrees in biochemistry and a determination to develop affordable cancer treatments that could serve patients regardless of their economic circumstances or geographic location. Miguel's early breakthroughs in chemotherapy had established Medicare Solutions as a trusted name in oncology while maintaining the highest standards of patient safety and clinical ethics. Emma's father, Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, had expanded the company during the 1990s by developing targeted cancer therapies that revolutionized treatment protocols while preserving the family's commitment to accessibility and patient welfare that distinguished Medicare from larger pharmaceutical companies focused primarily on profit maximization rather than healing outcomes. Under Carlos's leadership, Medicare Solutions had pioneered personalized medicine approaches that tailored treatments to individual patient genetics while maintaining affordable pricing structures that ensured life-saving medications remained accessible to families facing cancer diagnoses, regardless of their insurance coverage or ability to pay premium prices. The current Medicare Solutions employed over 40,000 researchers, clinicians, and manufacturing specialists while generating annual revenues of $22 billion through oncology medications that were distributed to hospitals and treatment centers in over 80 countries where patients depended on Medicare's commitment to safety and efficacy. Emma's medical and business background included degrees from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and Harvard Business School, followed by residency training in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where she had treated young cancer patients whose courage and resilience had inspired her transition from clinical practice to pharmaceutical development. Her experience caring for children with cancer had motivated Emma's focus on developing medications specifically designed for pediatric populations, recognizing that young patients required different therapeutic approaches and safety considerations than adult cancer treatments that dominated pharmaceutical research and development priorities. The Lumina cancer treatment represented the culmination of Medicare's research excellence, featuring breakthrough immunotherapy technology that enhanced the body's natural ability to fight cancer while minimizing the devastating side effects that had traditionally accompanied chemotherapy and radiation treatments for pediatric patients. The medication had required 12 years of development and over $4 billion in research investment before receiving FDA approval as a revolutionary breakthrough therapy that could transform childhood cancer survival rates while preserving quality of life for young patients and their families. Lumina's clinical trials had demonstrated unprecedented effectiveness in treating aggressive childhood cancers while showing remarkable safety profiles that eliminated many of the toxic effects associated with traditional cancer treatments, leading to its approval as the first-line treatment for pediatric solid tumors. The drug's commercial success had exceeded all projections, as pediatric oncologists worldwide prescribed Lumina for children with previously untreatable cancers, generating hope for families while establishing Medicare Solutions as the global leader in pediatric cancer therapy and childhood survival enhancement. Dr. Sarah Kim served as Medicare's Chief of Clinical Research, responsible for overseeing comprehensive clinical trials and post-market surveillance systems that monitored patient outcomes and medication safety throughout the product lifecycle, from initial testing through widespread clinical use. Sarah's background included advanced degrees in pediatric oncology and biostatistics from leading medical schools, followed by extensive experience in clinical trial design and safety monitoring that had earned recognition from medical organizations and regulatory agencies for innovative approaches to patient protection and treatment optimization. Her research team continuously analyzed patient data and treatment outcomes to identify potential safety signals, while collaborating with medical centers worldwide to ensure that Medicare's medications continued to demonstrate safety and efficacy in diverse patient populations and clinical settings. Dr. Richard Sterling had joined Medicare as Chief Medical Officer 5 years earlier, bringing impressive credentials from major pharmaceutical companies while promising to accelerate drug development timelines and expand market opportunities that would enhance profitability in increasingly competitive oncology markets. Richard's background included medical training at prestigious institutions and executive experience at companies known for aggressive development strategies and rapid market penetration, rather than the conservative clinical culture and patient-focused research that had historically characterized Medicare's approach to drug development and safety monitoring. But unknown to Emma or Sarah, Richard had been systematically falsifying clinical trial data and manipulating safety reports to conceal evidence that Lumina was actually accelerating tumor growth in some pediatric patients while coordinating with foreign pharmaceutical companies that sought to damage American oncology leadership through systematic patient harm. His research manipulation had included suppressing adverse events, modifying patient data, and concealing treatment failures while creating false documentation that showed improved survival rates and safety outcomes that supported continued prescribing and regulatory approval despite mounting evidence of treatment-related harm. The clinical report that had shattered Emma's world documented systematic treatment failures and accelerated cancer progression in children who had received Lumina therapy, indicating that the medication was not only ineffective, but potentially deadly for the young patients it was designed to help. The data revealed that pediatric patients receiving Lumina experienced faster tumor growth and shortened survival times compared to children receiving standard chemotherapy, suggesting that the breakthrough therapy was actually harming the children whose families had placed their hope in Medicare's promise of healing. On this particular Tuesday evening in October, Emma faced the most difficult decision in Medicare's history, as clinical evidence demonstrated that Lumina was endangering children while she had been scheduled to appear on national television to promote the medication's success and encourage broader adoption among pediatric oncology programs. The television appearance had been planned as a celebration of medical breakthrough and corporate achievement, but the clinical data now required Emma to use the platform to acknowledge systematic failure and potential harm to the children who represented Medicare's most vulnerable patients and sacred responsibility. The choice between protecting Medicare's reputation and acknowledging treatment failure would determine not just corporate survival, but also the future of childhood cancer treatment and the trust that families placed in pharmaceutical companies during their darkest moments of medical crisis and hope. Dr. Sarah Kim had been analyzing routine follow-up data from pediatric cancer centers when her statistical analysis revealed alarming patterns of treatment failure and accelerated disease progression in children receiving Lumina therapy, indicating systematic problems rather than isolated cases or patient-specific factors affecting treatment outcomes. The clinical investigation had identified concerning trends in survival data, while comprehensive analysis of treatment records confirmed that children receiving Lumina were experiencing faster cancer progression and higher mortality rates than patients receiving conventional chemotherapy, contradicting the breakthrough results that had led to FDA approval. The treatment outcome data indicates systematic failure patterns that suggest Lumina is accelerating tumor growth rather than controlling cancer progression in pediatric patients, Sarah explained to her senior research team while reviewing comprehensive analysis that documented treatment failures across multiple medical centers and patient populations. Her investigation had revealed that children treated with Lumina showed decreased survival rates while experiencing more aggressive cancer progression compared to historical controls and patients receiving standard care, indicating that the breakthrough therapy was potentially harming the young patients it was designed to help. The clinical data included treatment records from leading pediatric cancer centers that documented shortened survival times, increased tumor growth rates, and accelerated disease progression among children whose families had chosen Lumina based on promises of improved outcomes and reduced suffering. Sarah's analysis had identified specific patient populations where Lumina appeared particularly harmful, while statistical modeling predicted that continued use could result in thousands of preventable deaths among children who might have survived with conventional treatments despite their severe side effects and quality of life impacts. We have documented evidence suggesting that Lumina therapy may be contributing to accelerated cancer progression in over 60% of pediatric patients while reducing overall survival compared to standard chemotherapy, Sarah told her investigation team while preparing emergency safety reports for EMA and federal regulatory authorities. The survival data included longitudinal studies that tracked patient outcomes over extended periods, while demonstrating that children receiving Lumina experienced significantly worse outcomes than would have been expected with conventional treatments, despite the medication's approval based on promising early clinical trial results. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a pediatric oncologist at Boston Children's Hospital, had contacted Sarah directly after observing unexpectedly poor outcomes in children treated with Lumina while reviewing treatment protocols and patient data that suggested systematic problems with the breakthrough therapy. Dr. Kim, we're seeing treatment failures and accelerated progression in children who should be responding to Lumina based on your clinical trial data, Dr. Walsh reported during their urgent consultation. The outcomes are significantly worse than we would expect with conventional chemotherapy for similar patient populations. The medical reports included detailed case studies and treatment timelines that documented rapid cancer progression and treatment failures among children whose families had been told to expect improved survival and reduced suffering with the breakthrough immunotherapy approach. Sarah's investigation expanded to include international treatment centers that confirmed similar patterns of poor outcomes and accelerated disease progression, while regulatory databases revealed suppressed adverse event reports that should have triggered safety investigations and potential treatment modifications. The global analysis included treatment data from European and Asian medical centers that showed consistent patterns of poor outcomes, while demonstrating that Lumina's problems were not limited to specific populations or treatment protocols, but represented systematic therapeutic failure. But Sarah's most disturbing discovery was evidence that Richard Sterling had been systematically concealing treatment failures and manipulating clinical data while coordinating with Chinese pharmaceutical companies that sought to damage American oncology leadership through systematic patient harm and medical sabotage. The investigation revealed that Richard had been directing subordinate researchers to suppress adverse events, while modifying patient databases to show improved outcomes that supported continued prescribing and regulatory approval, despite mounting evidence of treatment-related harm and decreased survival. Richard has been systematically falsifying patient data while coordinating with Beijing Pharmaceuticals to conceal treatment failures that demonstrate Lumina's dangers, Sarah explained to her security-cleared deputy while documenting evidence of systematic fraud and patient endangerment that constituted federal crimes and medical malpractice. The evidence included email communications where Richard had instructed researchers to exclude patients with poor outcomes while modifying survival statistics to support continued marketing and physician adoption despite clear evidence of treatment failure and patient harm. Sarah's investigation also uncovered financial transactions that suggested Richard had been receiving substantial payments from Chinese pharmaceutical companies and investment funds that could profit from Medicare's collapse, while American oncology leadership suffered permanent damage from treatment scandals. This appears to be systematic economic warfare designed to destroy American pharmaceutical leadership while transferring market dominance and patient trust to Chinese competitors, Sarah realized, while analyzing the scope of foreign interference and national security implications affecting child welfare and medical sovereignty. The scope of Richard's betrayal extended beyond individual company sabotage to include broader attacks on American medical innovation that could affect global cancer treatment and pediatric care, while serving foreign intelligence objectives that sought to undermine American healthcare leadership. Sarah's discovery of the international conspiracy created immediate personal danger, as her investigation threatened to expose criminal activities that had generated substantial profits while endangering thousands of children and threatening Medicare's survival as an independent American pharmaceutical company. Her decision to contact Emma directly through secure communication systems reflected understanding that Richard's position and influence might enable him to suppress safety reports and continue endangering children while protecting his criminal associates and foreign intelligence contacts. The urgent encrypted message that Sarah sent to Emma's personal secure device was designed to bypass corporate communication systems that Richard might be monitoring while ensuring that critical safety information reached company leadership despite attempts at concealment and ongoing child endangerment. Emma, we have confirmed systematic Lumina treatment failures causing accelerated cancer progression in children. Richard has been falsifying data while coordinating with Chinese competitors. Over 60% of pediatric patients experiencing worse outcomes than conventional therapy. Immediate drug withdrawal required, children's lives at stake. The message crystallized the crisis that would force Emma to choose between Medicare's financial survival and her moral obligations to childhood cancer patients, while confronting the reality that trusted executives had been systematically betraying the company's mission and endangering the children who represented its most sacred responsibility. The CNN studio felt arctic cold despite the blazing television lights as Emma reviewed her prepared remarks one final time, knowing that she was about to abandon the corporate talking points that would protect Medicare's stock price in favor of a confession that could destroy everything her family had built while potentially saving thousands of children's lives. News anchor Janet Williams shuffled her papers while reviewing questions that had been designed to showcase Lumina's success and Medicare's breakthrough achievement in pediatric oncology, unaware that Emma was about to transform a promotional interview into the most shocking corporate confession in pharmaceutical history. Dr. Rodriguez, welcome to Health Watch Tonight, Janet began with professional warmth, while the red recording light indicated that 15 million viewers were watching live. Medicare's Lumina has been hailed as a breakthrough in childhood cancer treatment. Can you tell our audience about the impact this medication is having on young patients and their families? The question hung in the air as Emma felt the weight of truth pressing against her prepared corporate response, knowing that she could either deliver the expected celebration of medical breakthrough or use this platform to acknowledge systematic failure and potential harm to children who trusted Medicare with their lives. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she set aside her prepared notes and looked directly into the camera lens, understanding that her next words would either save her company through continued deception or honor her grandfather's legacy of healing through devastating honesty that could end her family's pharmaceutical dynasty. Janet, I came here tonight to tell families about Lumina's success, but I cannot continue promoting a medication that may be harming the children we promised to help, Emma began, while abandoning decades of corporate media training in favor of unfiltered truth that would shock viewers and devastate Medicare's market position. The studio fell silent as Janet's professional composure wavered, realizing that her routine pharmaceutical interview had suddenly become breaking news of unprecedented corporate responsibility and potential medical scandal that would dominate headlines for months. "Dr. Rodriguez, I'm not sure I understand," Janet replied, while trying to regain control of an interview that had departed completely from the expected promotional format. "Are you saying there are problems with Lumina therapy that haven't been previously disclosed?" Emma's response would later be analyzed as the moment when corporate healthcare communication fundamentally changed, as she chose radical transparency over legal protection while prioritizing child welfare over shareholder interests and family legacy preservation. "Janet, we have discovered evidence suggesting that Lumina may be accelerating cancer progression in some children rather than controlling their disease," Emma continued, while knowing that every word was destroying Medicare's market value in real time. "We were wrong about this medication's safety and effectiveness, and families deserve to know the truth immediately." The admission sent shockwaves through the studio and viewing audience as Emma became the first pharmaceutical CEO to voluntarily acknowledge systematic drug failure on live television, abandoning legal counsel and corporate protocol in favor of moral leadership that prioritized patient welfare over business survival. "This is extraordinary, Dr. Rodriguez," Janet responded, while recognizing that she was witnessing unprecedented corporate accountability in an industry known for legal minimization and liability protection. "What specific evidence has led you to make this acknowledgement on live television rather than through regulatory channels?" Emma's explanation revealed the scope of clinical failure while demonstrating corporate leadership that valued truth over self-preservation, establishing a new standard for pharmaceutical industry communication that prioritized patient protection over legal strategy and financial considerations. "Our clinical research teams have identified patterns of poor outcomes and accelerated disease progression in children receiving Lumina therapy," Emma explained, while providing specific medical details that further devastated Medicare's legal position. "These children and their families trusted us to help them fight cancer, and we have failed them in the most fundamental way possible." The interview continued for 18 more minutes as Emma methodically destroyed every legal defense, while providing families and medical professionals with comprehensive information about treatment failures and safety concerns that regulatory agencies and legal advisors would have strongly opposed disclosing without extensive preparation. Social media exploded with real-time reactions as medical professionals, patient advocates, and pharmaceutical industry observers struggled to process the unprecedented honesty while recognizing that Emma's confession represented fundamental transformation in corporate accountability and patient protection standards. Twitter hashtags Medicare Confession and Hag Pharma Honesty began trending globally within minutes as viewers shared clips of Emma's admission while medical professionals praised her courage and business analysts predicted catastrophic financial consequences for voluntary acknowledgement of systematic product failure. The interview concluded with Emma's direct apology to families affected by Lumina treatment failures, while announcing immediate drug withdrawal and comprehensive patient assistance programs that exceeded legal requirements and demonstrated authentic commitment to healing the harm her company had caused. "I want to speak directly to families who trusted Medicare with their children's lives," Emma said, while looking directly into the camera lens. "We were wrong, we failed you, and we will spend whatever resources are necessary to help your children receive the best possible care while we work to understand how this happened." The live television confession immediately triggered emergency trading suspensions as Medicare's stock price collapsed, while regulatory agencies prepared emergency investigations and competitor companies struggled to respond to Emma's unprecedented transparency that had fundamentally altered pharmaceutical industry standards and expectations. Emma remained in the studio for an additional hour, providing unscripted answers to viewer questions while continuing to prioritize truth over legal protection, demonstrating moral courage that distinguished authentic leadership from corporate crisis management and damage control strategies. The moments following Emma's live television confession created unprecedented chaos throughout the pharmaceutical industry as Medicare's stock price collapsed by 73%, while trading was halted across global markets, struggling to process the first voluntary acknowledgement of systematic drug failure by a major pharmaceutical CEO. The CNN studio became the epicenter of breaking news coverage as Emma remained on camera for additional questioning while news networks worldwide interrupted programming to report on the pharmaceutical confession that had shattered decades of industry communication protocols and legal protection strategies. Financial markets reacted with stunning speed as Medicare Solutions lost over $13 billion in market capitalization within 30 minutes of Emma's admission, while competitor pharmaceutical stocks also declined as investors questioned whether other companies might be concealing similar safety problems and treatment failures. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the pediatric oncologist from Boston Children's Hospital, who had first contacted Sarah Kim about treatment failures, immediately praised Emma's courage while organizing emergency medical conferences to address Lumina therapy discontinuation and alternative treatment protocols for affected children. Dr. Rodriguez's honesty tonight represents the most important moment in pharmaceutical accountability history, Dr. Walsh stated during emergency medical consultations. Her willingness to acknowledge failure and prioritize patient safety demonstrates the kind of leadership our industry desperately needs. Medical centers worldwide began implementing emergency protocols to evaluate children currently receiving Lumina therapy, while pediatric oncologists coordinated alternative treatment plans that could provide effective cancer care without the risks associated with the failed breakthrough medication. The American Academy of Pediatrics issued immediate guidance for physicians treating children with Lumina, while praising Emma's transparency and establishing protocols for transitioning patients to alternative therapies that could maintain treatment continuity during the medication withdrawal process. Patient advocacy organizations expressed both shock and gratitude for Emma's unprecedented honesty, while demanding comprehensive investigations into how systematic treatment failures had remained concealed for extended periods without triggering regulatory intervention or safety warnings. Families fighting childhood cancer deserve truth, not corporate protection, stated Childhood Cancer Coalition President Mary Santos during emergency press conferences. Dr. Rodriguez's honesty tonight may have saved thousands of children's lives by acknowledging failure before more families were affected. The Federal Drug Administration announced immediate investigation procedures while praising Emma's voluntary disclosure and cooperating with emergency safety reviews that would examine Lumina's approval process and post-market surveillance systems that had failed to detect systematic treatment problems. Congressional leaders from both parties called for emergency hearings while recognizing Emma's moral courage and demanding comprehensive investigation of pharmaceutical industry practices that might be concealing similar safety problems affecting vulnerable patient populations. Senator Patricia Williams, chair of the Health Committee, announced immediate hearings while supporting Emma's transparency. Dr. Rodriguez has demonstrated that pharmaceutical leaders can prioritize patients over profits. We need to understand how systematic failures were concealed and ensure this never happens again. International regulatory agencies coordinated emergency responses while recognizing Emma's voluntary disclosure as a model for pharmaceutical industry accountability that should be replicated globally to protect patients and maintain public trust in medical innovation and drug safety systems. The European Medicines Agency announced expedited safety reviews while working with American counterparts to ensure comprehensive investigation and patient protection throughout global markets where Lumina had been prescribed for childhood cancer treatment. Medical schools and pharmaceutical education programs immediately incorporated Emma's confession into ethics curricula while recognizing her decision as a watershed moment in corporate responsibility that would influence future healthcare leaders and industry accountability standards. Harvard Business School and Johns Hopkins School of Medicine announced joint case study development while using Emma's decision to teach future healthcare leaders about moral courage and the importance of prioritizing patient welfare over corporate financial interests and legal protection strategies. Legal experts predicted unprecedented challenges for Medicare while acknowledging that Emma's voluntary disclosure might actually provide better long-term protection than traditional liability minimization strategies that often resulted in larger settlements and criminal prosecution for concealment. Emma Rodriguez has revolutionized pharmaceutical crisis management by choosing honesty over legal strategy, explained healthcare law professor Dr. Michael Chen. Her approach may cost more initially, but could provide better outcomes for both patients and the company compared to traditional concealment approaches. Technology companies and other industries began examining Emma's approach while considering whether radical transparency might provide better crisis management outcomes than traditional legal protection and damage control strategies that often resulted in larger scandals and public trust destruction. Patient families who had lost children to cancer or experienced treatment failures with Lumina began organizing support groups while expressing gratitude for Emma's honesty and demanding comprehensive assistance programs that could address medical needs and family support during treatment transitions. The Rodriguez family received thousands of messages from medical professionals and patient families, while experiencing both praise for moral courage and concern about the financial devastation that Emma's honesty had created for the family pharmaceutical legacy and employee welfare. Emma's decision to prioritize patient welfare over corporate survival had created the most significant transformation in pharmaceutical industry communication while establishing new standards for corporate accountability that would influence healthcare leadership for generations. As news of Emma's confession spread across social media and medical networks worldwide, the human impact of Lumina's failure became devastatingly clear through testimonies from families whose children had experienced treatment failures while trusting Medicare's promise of breakthrough therapy and improved survival outcomes. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia Emergency Department served as a coordination center for families seeking immediate medical consultation about Lumina therapy discontinuation, while pediatric oncologists worked around the clock to develop alternative treatment protocols for children whose cancer care required immediate adjustment and family support. Dr. Jennifer Walsh led emergency medical response teams while documenting the clinical impact of treatment failures in children who had been prescribed Lumina based on promises of breakthrough outcomes that had now been revealed as systematic failure and potential harm to pediatric cancer patients. The immediate priority is ensuring continuity of care for children currently receiving Lumina while developing alternative treatment protocols that can provide effective cancer therapy without the risks we now understand, Dr. Walsh explained during emergency medical conferences. Maria Santos sat in the hospital family consultation room, holding medical records, documenting her 7-year-old son Diego's cancer progression during 6 months of Lumina therapy that had been prescribed as the best available treatment for his aggressive brain tumor diagnosis. Dr. Rodriguez's honesty tonight gives us hope that Diego can receive better treatment, but we're devastated that the medication we trusted may have allowed his cancer to grow faster, Maria said, while reviewing treatment timelines that showed tumor progression despite Lumina therapy. The family documentation revealed how breakthrough therapy promises had influenced treatment decisions while demonstrating the complex emotions experienced by families who had trusted pharmaceutical innovation with their children's lives during desperate medical circumstances. Emma's television confession had provided families with truth that enabled informed medical decisions while creating anxiety about treatment alternatives and concern about lost time during ineffective therapy that might have affected long-term survival prospects and recovery possibilities. Robert Chen, whose 9-year-old daughter Sarah had experienced rapid cancer progression during Lumina treatment, expressed both gratitude for Emma's honesty and anger about the deception that had endangered children while families believed they were providing optimal care. "We chose Lumina because we were told it was the breakthrough our daughter needed," Robert testified during family support meetings. Dr. Rodriguez's confession tonight shows that pharmaceutical companies can choose honesty, but we're heartbroken about the time we lost with ineffective treatment. The family impact documentation included not only medical concerns, but also emotional trauma and financial stress created by treatment failures, while families had spent resources on expensive breakthrough therapy that had potentially harmed rather than helped their children. Emma's announcement of comprehensive family assistance programs demonstrated Medicare's commitment to supporting affected families while establishing industry precedents for corporate accountability that extended beyond legal requirements to include moral responsibilities and healing support. Medicare will establish a $2 billion family assistance fund with no caps on individual support, while providing lifetime medical coverage and treatment services for all children affected by Lumina therapy failures, Emma announced during follow-up media appearances. The family assistance commitment represented unprecedented pharmaceutical industry accountability, while demonstrating that corporate leadership could acknowledge failure and provide meaningful support despite devastating financial consequences and legal vulnerability. International families affected by Lumina therapy revealed the global scope of treatment failures, while confirming that pharmaceutical dishonesty had endangered children across multiple countries and cultures who had trusted American medical innovation for their children's cancer care. The London Children's Hospital Coordination Centre included support for British families whose children had received Lumina through international treatment protocols, while Emma's confession had created hope for truth and accountability in global pharmaceutical development and patient protection. Pediatric medical organizations worldwide coordinated emergency response protocols, while developing alternative treatment guidelines that could provide effective cancer therapy for children who had been receiving Lumina when systematic failures were acknowledged and treatment modifications became necessary. Children's cancer care requires immediate protocol adjustments while maintaining hope and treatment continuity during this transition period, explained International Society of Pediatric Oncology President Dr. Patricia Kim while coordinating global medical response to Lumina withdrawal. The medical response demonstrated international cooperation in protecting children, while acknowledging that Emma's honesty had prevented additional treatment failures and enabled informed medical decisions that could improve outcomes for future pediatric cancer patients. Child development specialists documented psychological impact on families while creating support programs that addressed anxiety and trust issues related to medical treatment and pharmaceutical companies that had emerged following acknowledgement of systematic treatment failure and corporate deception. Children and families need psychological support to process treatment failure while maintaining hope for alternative therapies, explained Stanford Child Psychology Institute Director Dr. Michael Rodriguez, while developing family counseling programs and medical anxiety interventions. The psychological support services addressed family trauma while helping children and parents cope with medical uncertainty and treatment transitions that resulted from pharmaceutical failure, and the need to develop new therapeutic approaches for ongoing cancer care. Educational specialists developed communication strategies to help families discuss treatment changes with children while maintaining optimism about alternative therapies and medical progress, despite acknowledgement of previous pharmaceutical failure and treatment disappointment. Research organizations began comprehensive analysis of Lumina's failure, while identifying lessons that could improve drug development and safety monitoring to prevent similar incidents and protect future patients from systematic treatment failures and pharmaceutical deception. Support groups formed among affected families, while creating networks for sharing experiences and advocating for enhanced pharmaceutical accountability and patient protection that could prevent similar incidents and ensure corporate honesty in medical innovation and treatment development. Medicare Solutions headquarters became a fortress of crisis management, as Emma's television confession triggered the largest pharmaceutical industry catastrophe in modern history, while teams of lawyers, accountants, and crisis specialists worked around the clock to assess the devastating consequences of voluntary corporate accountability and systematic product failure acknowledgement. Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Patricia Lee presented catastrophic financial projections that documented total crisis costs exceeding $25 billion, while evaluating strategic options for corporate survival following unprecedented voluntary disclosure of systematic drug failure and potential patient harm. The immediate market collapse has eliminated $13 billion in market capitalization, while legal liability estimates range from $15 to $30 billion for wrongful death claims and medical malpractice settlements, Lee explained, while displaying financial scenarios that showed potential bankruptcy and corporate dissolution. The financial devastation extended beyond immediate stock losses to include regulatory penalties, class action settlements, product development write-offs, and operational costs associated with drug withdrawal and patient assistance programs that could eliminate Medicare as an independent pharmaceutical company. Legal departments coordinated emergency response strategies, While recognizing that Emma's voluntary disclosure had eliminated traditional liability protection while potentially providing moral authority and public support that could influence judicial outcomes and settlement negotiations. Emma's television confession has created unprecedented legal exposure while potentially generating public sympathy and regulatory cooperation that traditional concealment strategies rarely achieve, explained Chief Legal Counsel Jennifer Walsh while evaluating settlement strategies and corporate survival options. The legal implications included federal criminal investigations, regulatory enforcement actions, international lawsuits, and shareholder litigation, while Emma's honesty had complicated traditional defense strategies that relied on denying knowledge and minimizing corporate responsibility for product failures. Board of Directors emergency meetings addressed corporate governance and leadership decisions while evaluating Emma's performance and the strategic implications of voluntary transparency that had prioritized patient welfare over shareholder interests and corporate financial protection. Independent Director Dr. Michael Chen praised Emma's moral courage while acknowledging fiduciary obligations to shareholders who had suffered devastating losses from voluntary corporate confession and systematic product failure acknowledgement that could have been managed differently. Emma's decision represents unprecedented moral leadership while creating enormous financial consequences that affect employees, shareholders, and communities who depend on Medicare's continued operations. Dr. Chen stated during board deliberations about corporate strategy and leadership accountability. The board ultimately supported Emma's decision while implementing emergency restructuring plans that would preserve core research capabilities and employee welfare despite financial devastation created by choosing patient protection over corporate liability, minimization, and traditional crisis management approaches. International pharmaceutical companies analyzed Emma's approach while evaluating whether radical transparency might provide superior crisis management outcomes compared to traditional legal protection strategies that often resulted in larger scandals and permanent reputation damage. Competitor companies faced market pressure to disclose potential safety problems, while Emma's precedent created expectations for industry-wide accountability and transparency that could transform pharmaceutical communication standards and regulatory compliance approaches throughout global healthcare markets. Stock market analysts struggled to evaluate Medicare's prospects while recognizing that Emma's moral leadership had created unique market dynamics where traditional financial modeling might not predict outcomes for companies that prioritized ethical leadership over traditional business considerations. Medicare represents unprecedented corporate accountability that makes traditional valuation models inadequate, explained Morgan Stanley pharmaceutical analyst Dr. Robert Kim while developing new frameworks for evaluating companies that demonstrated radical transparency and patient-focused crisis management. Credit rating agencies downgraded Medicare's debt while acknowledging that Emma's approach might generate long-term competitive advantages through enhanced regulatory cooperation and public trust that could provide business benefits despite immediate financial devastation. Employee organizations rallied support for Emma's leadership while organizing workforce stability initiatives that would preserve jobs and research capabilities despite financial pressures created by voluntary corporate accountability and pharmaceutical industry transformation. Emma's honesty represents the kind of leadership that makes us proud to work in pharmaceutical research, stated Medicare Scientists Union President Dr. Sarah Martinez while organizing employee support and research continuation programs despite corporate financial crisis. The workforce support demonstrated cultural alignment with Emma's values while providing operational stability during financial uncertainty and corporate restructuring that threatened employment and research programs throughout Medicare's global operations and manufacturing facilities. Private equity firms offered acquisition proposals while recognizing Medicare's enhanced regulatory standing and public trust as valuable assets that could provide competitive advantages despite immediate financial devastation and legal liability from pharmaceutical failure acknowledgement. Strategic investors evaluated opportunities to support Emma's leadership while accessing pharmaceutical development capabilities and regulatory relationships that had been enhanced through unprecedented corporate accountability and patient protection demonstrated during systematic crisis management. Government agencies explored support options while recognizing Medicare's strategic importance for American pharmaceutical leadership and the precedent that Emma's moral courage had established for industry accountability and patient protection throughout global healthcare markets. Dr. Richard Sterling's arrest by federal agents occurred at Medicare headquarters while he was attempting to destroy research records and communication logs that documented his coordination with foreign intelligence services and systematic falsification of clinical trial data that had endangered children while serving Chinese competitive interests. FBI Special Agent Jennifer Martinez announced criminal charges that included foreign agent activities, medical fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and endangering minors, while documenting Richard's collaboration with Chinese pharmaceutical companies and intelligence services that sought to destroy American medical research leadership through systematic patient harm. Dr. Sterling used his position at Medicare to systematically endanger children while serving foreign intelligence objectives and receiving substantial financial payments for betraying American patients and medical innovation, Agent Martinez explained while presenting evidence of criminal activities that had affected thousands of children. The federal investigation revealed that Richard's data falsification was part of broader Chinese intelligence operations targeting American pharmaceutical companies, while his coordination with Beijing medical research represented systematic economic warfare against American healthcare innovation and patient safety. The charges included conspiracy to commit murder, based on evidence that Richard had deliberately concealed evidence of accelerated cancer progression, while knowing that continued prescribing would result in children's deaths, establishing criminal intent that warranted maximum penalties under federal murder statutes. Evidence shows that Dr. Sterling knowingly falsified data about childhood cancer treatment while receiving over $8 million from Chinese intelligence services, prosecutor Maria Santos announced, while presenting financial records and communications that documented systematic betrayal of patient welfare. Medical fraud charges documented Richard's systematic modification of clinical trial results, while his creation of false safety data had enabled continued prescribing of dangerous medications to vulnerable pediatric populations who trusted pharmaceutical research for their survival and recovery. Technical analysis shows that Dr. Sterling deliberately altered survival statistics and suppressed adverse events while coordinating with foreign entities to damage American pharmaceutical leadership, explained FBI Medical Fraud Division investigator Dr. Michael Chen. Foreign agent charges reflected evidence that Richard had been recruited and directed by Chinese Ministry of State Security operatives who provided specific requirements for data falsification while coordinating broader campaigns to damage American medical innovation and patient care capabilities. Investigation reveals that Dr. Sterling was a directed agent of Chinese intelligence services operating under medical cover to sabotage American pharmaceutical research while transferring clinical knowledge and patient data to hostile foreign governments, testified CIA medical intelligence analyst Dr. Patricia Williams. The foreign intelligence connection elevated Richard's case from medical malpractice to national security emergency, while demonstrating that pharmaceutical sabotage constituted systematic warfare against American healthcare capabilities and childhood cancer treatment that served both civilian and national defense medical requirements. Richard's criminal trial attracted international attention as prosecutors presented evidence of systematic betrayal that had endangered American children while serving hostile foreign intelligence objectives and criminal financial conspiracies that threatened pharmaceutical industry integrity and patient safety. Victim impact statements from families provided emotional context while demonstrating the human consequences of medical fraud and foreign interference that had caused preventable suffering and treatment failures among children whose families trusted pharmaceutical research with their children's lives. Maria Santos testified about her son Diego's cancer progression during falsified Lumina therapy, while establishing moral urgency that influenced jury deliberations and public understanding of foreign interference consequences and medical research security implications. Dr. Sterling betrayed my son's trust while allowing his cancer to progress for Chinese intelligence services and personal profit, Maria testified, while presenting medical records that documented treatment failure, enabled by systematic data falsification and foreign interference. Expert witnesses explained the medical and research mechanisms of Richard's crimes, while documenting how pharmaceutical sabotage could affect national health security and American competitiveness in global healthcare markets that required trustworthy medical research and patient protection capabilities. The jury deliberation lasted 37 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges, while recommending maximum sentences that reflected the severity of child endangerment and foreign interference with American medical research and patient care systems. The evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking, explained jury foreman Dr. Jennifer Walsh after the verdict. Dr. Sterling systematically betrayed children and American medical research while serving foreign intelligence objectives and personal greed that violated every principle of medical ethics. Federal sentencing included life imprisonment without possibility of parole, while comprehensive asset forfeiture eliminated criminal profits and provided additional resources for victim assistance and pharmaceutical security improvements that would protect American medical research from foreign interference. The conviction established legal precedents for prosecuting foreign interference with medical research, while demonstrating that pharmaceutical crimes against children would face maximum penalties regardless of professional credentials or foreign intelligence protection. Emma's television confession and Richard Sterling's conviction created lasting changes in pharmaceutical industry practices while establishing new standards for corporate accountability, clinical trial transparency, and patient protection that would influence global healthcare development and medical ethics for generations. The Pharmaceutical Transparency Act, passed with unanimous congressional support, incorporated lessons from Emma's leadership while requiring mandatory disclosure of clinical trial failures and establishing criminal penalties for data falsification that endangered patients, particularly vulnerable populations like children with serious medical conditions. Emma Rodriguez's moral courage demonstrates that pharmaceutical leaders can prioritize patients over profits, while Richard Sterling's betrayal shows why we need enhanced security and accountability, explained congressional sponsor Senator Patricia Williams, while outlining legislative requirements for industry transformation. The legislation included mandatory real-time reporting of adverse events while establishing independent oversight mechanisms that could detect data falsification and foreign interference before they endangered patients and undermined public trust in pharmaceutical research and medical innovation. International regulatory agencies adopted Emma's transparency standards as global pharmaceutical requirements while establishing information-sharing protocols that could identify safety problems and criminal activity across national boundaries and regulatory jurisdictions. The World Health Organization and International Council for Harmonization incorporated Medicare's patient protection protocols into global pharmaceutical regulations, while recognizing that ethical leadership and corporate accountability could serve both patient welfare and industry credibility in international healthcare markets. Academic institutions established research programs in pharmaceutical ethics and corporate responsibility, while incorporating Emma's decision into medical school and business school curricula that taught future healthcare leaders about moral courage and patient advocacy during crisis situations. Harvard Medical School and Wharton Business School created joint programs in healthcare leadership while using Emma's confession as a case study in ethical decision-making and corporate accountability that demonstrated how moral courage could create positive outcomes despite immediate financial costs. Medicare Solutions became a model for pharmaceutical industry accountability while providing consulting services for other companies that needed guidance on ethical leadership and patient protection during crisis situations that required balancing corporate survival with moral obligations. Emma's continued leadership at Medicare while promoting Sarah Kim to Chief Executive Officer reflected the company's commitment to research excellence and patient protection that had distinguished the organization's crisis response while preparing for future challenges in global pharmaceutical development. Our experience with foreign interference and clinical fraud made Medicare stronger and more committed to patient welfare than ever before, Emma announced during the company's annual research conference, while outlining strategic initiatives that leveraged enhanced security and ethical reputation. The pharmaceutical industry adopted Emma's transparency standards, while recognizing that patient protection and corporate accountability required fundamental changes in communication strategies and crisis management that prioritized healing over legal protection and financial considerations. Patient advocacy organizations established Emma Rodriguez Memorial Foundation for Pharmaceutical Accountability, while providing resources for families affected by medical fraud and promoting legislative reforms that would enhance patient protection and corporate responsibility. Emma's courage in acknowledging failure while prioritizing children's welfare demonstrates the kind of leadership our families need from pharmaceutical companies, stated Foundation President Dr. Jennifer Walsh while organizing advocacy programs and patient protection initiatives. The Foundation's advocacy initiatives influenced pharmaceutical regulation globally while generating policy reforms and accountability measures that enhanced patient protection and family support during medical crises and treatment failures that required corporate responsibility and transparent communication. Richard Sterling's life imprisonment served as a deterrent to pharmaceutical crime, while his case established legal precedents for prosecuting foreign interference and medical fraud that threatened American healthcare capabilities and patient safety systems. Enhanced federal capabilities for detecting pharmaceutical crime prevented numerous additional cases, while demonstrating that comprehensive security measures and industry cooperation could protect medical research from foreign interference and criminal activity. Medicare's financial recovery exceeded projections as the company's enhanced reputation and regulatory standing attracted new research partnerships and government contracts that provided competitive advantages and sustainable revenue growth despite initial crisis costs. The company's new medications incorporating enhanced safety protocols achieved accelerated regulatory approval, while international markets embraced Medicare's transparency standards and patient protection commitments that distinguished ethical pharmaceutical development. Emma's personal transformation from traditional pharmaceutical executive to industry reform leader established her as a respected voice for medical ethics, while validating the principle that moral courage could generate sustainable competitive advantages and societal benefits. The television cameras that had recorded Emma's confession captured a defining moment of corporate leadership, while documenting the personal courage required to prioritize patient welfare over financial success and family legacy preservation. Epilogue: The Legacy of Truth. 5 years after the night Emma Rodriguez chose truth over corporate survival by confessing on live television that we were wrong, her decision had fundamentally transformed pharmaceutical industry standards while proving that moral courage could create sustainable competitive advantages and lasting societal benefits. Medicare Solutions had not only survived the financial devastation, but emerged as the most trusted pharmaceutical company in the world, with enhanced safety protocols and transparency standards that attracted global admiration and competitive advantages in markets where patient protection was paramount. Emma's continued leadership while transitioning to chairman allowed Sarah Kim to serve as CEO, reflecting the company's commitment to scientific excellence and patient advocacy that had distinguished Medicare's transformation while preparing for future challenges in global healthcare innovation. Emma's courage to acknowledge failure while prioritizing children's welfare transformed our industry and saved countless lives, Sarah announced during Medicare's annual patient advocacy conference, while outlining research initiatives that maintain the company's commitment to healing and transparency. The Pharmaceutical Transparency Act had prevented numerous similar incidents, while establishing comprehensive regulatory frameworks that protected patients from foreign interference and ensured that corporate accountability remained the highest priority for medical innovation and healthcare development. Emma's television confession had become legendary in business ethics and medical education, while serving as proof that individual moral courage could protect vulnerable populations and transform entire industries through authentic leadership and comprehensive accountability. Medical schools worldwide used Emma's decision to teach future physicians and researchers about the importance of prioritizing patient welfare over institutional protection, while pharmaceutical companies adopted her transparency standards as models for ethical leadership. The Rodriguez family's pharmaceutical legacy had been strengthened through Emma's moral courage, while proving that authentic healing required acknowledging failure and prioritizing patient welfare over financial success and competitive positioning. International healthcare organizations recognized Emma's leadership while establishing global standards for pharmaceutical accountability that protected patients and maintained public trust in medical innovation and scientific research throughout the world. The children and families affected by Lumina's failure received comprehensive care and support, while many patients achieved better outcomes through alternative treatments that were developed following Emma's acknowledgement of systematic therapeutic failure. Most importantly, Emma's confession had proven that corporate leaders could choose truth over self-preservation while generating positive outcomes that far exceeded temporary financial costs and demonstrated that healing required honesty, courage, and unwavering commitment to patient welfare. Her legacy continued to inspire healthcare leaders and business executives who understood that authentic leadership required moral courage and that the greatest achievements came from prioritizing human welfare over personal and corporate interests. The words "we were wrong" had become a symbol of corporate accountability and medical ethics, proving that acknowledging failure could create opportunities for healing and transformation that benefited patients, families, and society, while establishing lasting competitive advantages through authentic leadership. If this story touched you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments what part resonated most with you. Until next time.